start that process. You may have a message saying that it's recording and giving you the option to leave if you need to. But we'll get this recorded and get it posted on our website and through the Division of Children and Family Services as well. They're on that website. There are other recordings, those other sessions that I talked about, those recordings are up. So I will put a link to that website in the chat. Feel free to peruse those other trainings, see what we've got coming up, see what's been recorded, and share the information with others once it's up. The other link I'm going to put in is to my mailing list. If you would like to sign up to get the email for future trainings or to know what's going on in the world of school safety, I'd be glad to have you on the mailing list. And the last link I'm going to put in is for a quick evaluation, just 6 questions. We'd love to have feedback on this session. I know Sharice would like feedback to help her prepare and advance her training abilities and what she's offering. And also, I'd like to know if there's any other sessions that I can offer for you, topics that you're interested in or things that we can provide. So I'll put all those links into the chat in just a minute. So for today's session, you should see across the bottom, the closed captioning is rolling. If that is distracting to you or you need to change or modify that, there should be a closed captioning CC button somewhere around the left or the right side of your screen at the bottom. You can change those settings. You can turn it on and off, whatever you need to do. And a little bit more towards the left side of the screen, you should see the chat button. And that's how you'll be able to put in your questions. I'll be monitoring that for Sharice. And as you have questions, just pop them in there. And then I think we've also got some time built in at the end for a Q&A during that session as well. So I think that covers everything that I need to say, and so I'll get out of your window and let you hear from the person you're here for today, and that is Ms. Sharice Cashaw.
Thank you, Suzanne. Good morning, everyone. Like Suzanne said, my name is Sharice Cashaw, and I'm the program manager for a program called Differential Response. That program is housed within the Division of Children and Family Services. And it's part of a bigger unit called the Prevention and Reunification Unit. And in that unit, we have other programs. We have investigations, we have our in-home services and team decision-making, just to name a few. And I'm coming to talk to you today about Differential Response, which is a program surprisingly not known amongst a lot of people. Typically, when you hear Division in Children and Family Services, most people immediately connect that to foster care or removal of children. And I'm here to tell you that we have other responses in addition to foster care and investigations, and DR is one of those responses. DR is a non-adversarial approach and was really birthed out of the need to respond differently to families' needs. Not every family will have an immediate safety threat where there is a removal. Not every family experiences, let's say, bad parenting or are just really horrible people and abuse their kids. Sometimes, and most times, parents just don't know how to parent, whether they're young and just don't know what to do, or they grew up in kind of a situation where they didn't receive a lot of good modeling of parenting from their own parents. And so we kind of try to parcel out those types of responses or those types of situations and want to kind of tailor our response to those different types of needs. And as I'm talking, if you have any questions, please interject. You can take yourself off. Well, you can't take yourself off mute. I apologize. Suzanne said that already, but you can drop a line in the chat and Suzanne will tell me what that question is and I will respond. Differential response was really a mandated response from the federal government. That happened in 2011, actually, through the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act, CAPTA for short. And so states were mandated to create this different response or alternative response to child maltreatment. And so the state of Arkansas created in their state law a way for us to do this. And really, it's a very simple language in state law allowing us to triage different triage referrals and kind of slot them into different routes. And those different routes include investigation and differential response. And we're going to talk a little bit about how those two responses differ. So with investigations, referrals that are mainly abuse and or high risk neglect are routed towards investigations. And in investigations, they're really gathering forensic evidence to come to some formal determination. They're going to assess whether the child maltreatment that was alleged is true or not true. They do that by interviewing family members, collaterals. They're required to interview the alleged victim outside of the presence of the alleged offender, interviewing parents, collaterals, and the reporter. And differential response, or DR, we aren't gathering evidence to come to a final determination. We are not interviewing the alleged victim outside of the presence of the offender or perpetrator. We're treating the family as a whole. And when we're working in DR, we're not identifying a perpetrator or victim. Again, we're treating the family as a whole. It's family-centered, non-adversarial, and non-accusatory. And even though when we're assessing, there may be maltreatment, and if it was an investigation, it would be true. Again, we're not making that determination. If we determine that there is a need, we've assessed maltreatment, and we need to lower the risk in the home, we are working with that family, identifying informal supports, community supports, and family support to mitigate the risk and hopefully keep that maltreatment from reoccurring. Any questions so far? Anything in the chat, Suzanne? Okay.
Not yet.
All right, thanks. So we talked about how investigations in DR differ. We do have things in common. We focus on safety, well-being, and permanency. And we also still have the authority to remove children from the home. So if we get out there and we determine that there is a safety threat, an immediate safety threat, we still have the authority to remove a child from the home. Now, our DR staff, we're very small but mighty. We have about 37 family service workers who work in this program throughout the state. They receive special training to work in the DR unit or for the DR program because our main value is family engagement. And we're really working from a strength-based perspective. We oftentimes have to think outside the box to work with families. And we really want families to lead on what they think their family needs, because they are the experts of their own lives. So we really work hard in building a rapport with families and helping them meet their needs. And this has been a challenge for us because of the negative views or perceptions that most people have about children and family services and DHS as a whole. Most times we're met with a lot of opposition. Families are afraid that we're coming in to take their children, but we're really wanting to focus on partnering with families and not judging them for making a mistake. I mean, when you think about the commonalities of life challenges, we all face barriers as parents, even as human beings. And sometimes we make poor choices. And so we don't want families to feel judged by that or feel bad about that, but we want them to know that we're here to help and that there's other people who can help and who they can call on if they're faced with barriers in the future. And so that's really our goal for differential response. And as an agency, and I'm putting in a plug here, we're moving to a new practice, and not really new because these are things that we do typically already, but we're enhancing our practice to really focus on family-centered engagement. And it's called Safety Organized Practice. And it's really teaching us the importance of what you say and how you say it. And also this new practice is giving us tools to help us better focus on the needs of families and focus on safety, focus on circles of support for families, and focus on community support for families. And the idea is that it takes a village, right? We can't do this alone. We need community support. We need school supports. We need everyone working together so that families can feel supported and families know that they have those supports in times of need. So this is kind of what happens when a mandated reporter makes a call to our hotline, which is for Arkansas, the state police. And so the hotline staff, based on the information that's given to them, will determine what route that referral will go if that referral meets criteria for child maltreatment and if it's accepted. And we will talk a little later about what meets criteria for DR. And so that hotline staff operator Once they get all the information from the reporter, they'll let you know if the referral is accepted or not, and they'll let you know which route that referral is going. So if it goes to an investigation, again, they'll make a formal determination. They have up until 45 days to make that determination. If it's true, depending on the circumstances, they may open an in-home case, meaning that the child was able to remain in the home, and staff has been assigned to this family, and they're working with the family to address the maltreatment and lower any risks that may have been identified. Also, if a report is found true and they had to remove that child, then that child would either go to foster care or be placed in a provisional with a family member or kinship. If it comes to our unit, differential response, we're going out, we have 72 hours to meet at least the child who has been identified as being maltreated, and at least one parent within 72 hours. We have 72 hours to make face-to-face contact with that child and at least one parent. 5 days after we receive that call, we have to meet everybody else in the home. So by the 5th day of receiving that referral, we should have met everybody who lives in that home. And at that time, we're assessing for health and safety. If we get out there and there's an immediate threat, we're calling out an investigator to continue to assess that safety threat. So they may remove the child or children, or they may put in a protection plan. If neither of those two things happen, we determine that the child is safe, then we'll move on to do an assessment about strengths and needs. And so if our assessment determines that, yes, there's some maltreatment here, there's low to moderate risk, there's some services we can put in place, we continue to work with that family in DR. We don't hand it over to another worker like they would do in an investigation. Once that investigation is closed, they open a case, they hand it off to another worker. We don't do that in differential response. We stay with that family through the duration of the case. And these are very short-term cases. They can last up to 60 days. And if a family continues to have needs beyond that 60-day timeframe, we then open up a supportive services case, and we continue to work with that family. If we get out there, we've assessed and we determine that there is no maltreatment, or we've assessed that that family has protective factors in place that serve as a barrier to maltreatment, then we close our DR with no services. And again, if there's a safety threat or we identify new worries that rise to a level of an investigation, then we're either calling those new worries and back into the hotline, or we're overriding our DR investigation. And so that's pretty much the process, kind of a high level overview of the process of how referrals are routed from the hotline. And these are the maltreatment types that are accepted for DR. Again, we're parceling out kind of what situations or maltreatment types are more appropriate for DR, which would be our low to moderate risk worries. And then those kind of high risk maltreatment types like sexual abuse, Munchausen, those types, physical abuse that happen within a year, those are routed to investigations. So some of the maltreatment types for DR include inadequate supervision, that the child has to be 5 years or older unless they have some type of physical or mental disability that limits their skills in communication, self-care, and self-direction. If they're 5 and older and they have a disability, then that goes to investigation. And as you know, educational neglect comes to DR. We get all of those reports except for the ones where a child has never been enrolled in school. If they've never been enrolled in school, that's going to go to investigations. We receive environmental neglect worries. The child has to be 3 or older. We also respond to lockout, medical neglect, only children 13 or older unless they have a severe medical condition. And then we take all inadequate food, clothing, and shelter, no matter the age. We do take some abuse allegations, but they have to have occurred a year or more ago. And I think that came out right. Anything less than a year has to go to investigations. So that includes human bites, sprains, dislocations, striking a child age 7 or older on the face, striking a child with a closed fist, throwing a child. Again, those will come to DR if they're older than a year, unless they have some type of evidence that the abuse occurred. And that evidence can be in pictures or medical records. And we also have situations, if we receive a referral from the hotline, it's been routed to differential response. And upon reading the narrative and doing a CRIS history search, which we do on all referrals that come in, we kind of see what kind of history does this family have? Is this a reoccurring situation? Because sometimes we get in there and we read the history and we see that a family just had an open foster care case. Their children were just removed. The worries involved drug use, something that has been happening for years. We look at all of that information and really determine, is this an appropriate referral and or family, or an appropriate intervention for this family? Is DR appropriate for them? And sometimes after reading the history and what's in the narrative, we determine that this is not the best intervention for this family. We can override that DR and send it back to investigation. And investigations will work that referral. So again, thinking about family-centered services and the strength-based approach, this is our focus in DR. Not just looking at what's wrong, but looking at what's strong. And part of our shift to safety organized practice, again, which is the new practice that we're shifting to, really really teaches us to conduct a rigorous and balanced assessment. And in conducting that rigorous and balanced assessment, we have to look at both pieces and not really focus on all the problems, not be problem saturated or strengths saturated, but look at them equally. And if we look at both the problems and the worries and the strengths, we can really get a rigorous and balanced assessment and really tailor our interventions to meet the needs of the family. And so we call collaterals, we call reporters, and we're asking strength-based questions about families. What do you know about this family? What have you already assessed about this family? Do you know what their strengths are? Do you know if they have any informal supports? And this has really thrown off a lot of school officials when we call and ask these questions. Because it's been my experience that the attendance clerk is normally the person that calls in the educational neglect referrals. And so a lot of this information they may not know. And so if I can offer any suggestions, one would be if you're calling in an educational neglect referral, if you can add maybe the teacher's information and contact number or the school counselor information and number, we can call them in addition to the school clerk or whoever the reporter is, so we can get as much information on the family as possible, so we can address their needs and conduct that rigorous and balanced assessment. So partnering with families. As I mentioned before, we continue to work with families in addressing their needs through the DR. And part of assessing needs is conducting a family strengths and needs assessment. So we're gathering information that will explore the 5 protective factors. And we're also creating a family plan that will take the information that we assess from that family strengths and needs assessment to identify goals for the family, and to identify supports. We also work with families on an aftercare plan that really helps them kind of figure out what steps will you take when faced with future challenges. Because again, our goal is not only to mitigate the concern or the worries that brought them to our doorstep in the first place, but help them not return, right? We love to help them, and we're glad that we had the opportunity to help them, but we want them to be able to know what to do, know where to go if they're faced with a similar barrier again. So that was differential response. That was really a high level presentation about DR. Any questions about any part of that process?
We've not had any come in, but maybe they'll start falling in now. While we're waiting for those questions, I just want to, this is, I guess, more of a comment than a question. I love the fact that you do a strengths and needs assessment, because, you know, I think as educators, we all know if we are looking for what's wrong, we will always find what's wrong. And then you become tunnel visioned on a problem and not the bigger picture of, are there supports that could be put in place, or are there strengths that could be built upon so that that child could stay with the family? So that's that was a really good point. I'm glad to know that part of the process.
Absolutely. And we're moving child welfare as a whole. We've done really bad in that area, just sticking kind of in that problem saturated area. And that's how children end up in that cycle, right? They kind of linger in foster care, or cases kind of stay open because we're just focused on the problem, or we're too focused on like the mitigating factors or the high risk, and we lose focus of what the real risks are, what the real safety threat is. And so safety organized practice is kind of helping us, one, identify not only the worries, but the strengths, right? And it helps us build the strength that kind of take away those worries. And so we've been doing DR since 2012, and we've been doing this practice, right? Assessing for strengths and needs. And so here it is, 2021, and now we're looking at all of our interventions, getting all of our programs to think this way, kind of how DR has been operating and thinking for so many years. And families are better for it, right? They respond better when you're not coming into their home and you're shaking your finger in their face, or you're accusing them, or telling them what to do. Families don't respond well to that. But
Nobody does. Nobody
does, right? But if you're coming in and you're sincere, and you're partnering with them, and you're asking for their perspective, or what do what do you think about this situation? They're more likely to work with you. They're more likely to listen. And then they're more likely to change, because they're the ones that created the solution, right? Because you're asking them those solution focused questions about what do they need, what do they think.
I'm going to take just a second here and share a little bit of a personal note. For those of y'all who don't know me, I actually volunteer as a court-appointed special advocate and work with the children who are actually pulled from their homes and placed in foster care. But also, as a CASA, sometimes we work with children who are remaining in the homes if we've been assigned to that case. I did not work this case, but I was aware of it, and it really was an eye-opening situation for me. It was a report of neglect, and the children were, basically coming to school dirty, not as clean as they thought they should be, maybe some signs of hunger or that type of thing. So it was kind of a neglect report. But in investigating it, and this may have gone, Sharice, through your unit, what they found was the mother was recently divorced, had 3 children. In that divorce, she got nothing, had nothing. And for a while, she and the children had actually been living in her car. She had worked 2 jobs, I believe, was working 2 jobs, and had gotten enough money to get them into a house. And this was not a house that most of us would consider. When you looked at it, it was a shack. It was something we thought should be condemned, boarded up windows because there was no glass in the windows. You can just imagine what they were living in. But this mother, who was caring and loving and doing her dead level best, and I may start tearing up, to take care of her kids, was working 2 jobs. And what the house was as clean as it could be. It was just not a very good house. She was doing everything she could to take care of them. They had electricity, but they did not have running water. And so that was part of the cleanliness issue. To combat that, she would take the children every couple days, 2 or 3 days, to a local truck stop. And she would buy cases of bottled water that she would then take back home to use to cook in the, around the house and that type of thing. But she used that purchase to allow her kids to use the showers at the truck stop. So here's a mom who's literally doing everything she can. And if someone had walked in and said, "How dare you," and pulled the children out of that situation, think what it would have done to that family unit. A worker, and again, it might have come out of Sharice's unit, walked in, took the time to listen, took the time to look around, and figured out this wasn't children being neglected. This was a family struggling. They were able to get them assistance. They were able to get them into clean housing, and that mother was able to keep her family. So there goes the tears. So when I say that there is a process behind that call, it is so much more than just walking in and yanking children out of their home, because that's not always the best situation. Sometimes it's needed, but that's not the first point. And while I'm being a little bit open, I told Sharice before we started, when I was my background is family and consumer science. I have always advocated for families and homes and children and what is good in that societal, that is the good of our societal unit. When I became a CASA, I remember very clearly the night in our training where they were talking about the need to leave children in their home if that is possible, the need to preserve that family unit. And it was a moment of heart and brain colliding for me, because my heart has always been protect the family, but my brain would say a child in need needs to be pulled out. And so I really did, it was a moment where I realized that leaving a child in a situation that's not the best is sometimes better, as long as you can improve the situation. And you might improve that situation not only for that child, but for the parents and any other siblings in the home as well. So sorry to go down that little bit of a rabbit hole, but I think that very much emphasizes what Sharice has been saying, that there's more of an approach to a maltreatment investigation than just simply pulling the kids out of the home.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because as you were sharing that story, I kept hearing acts of protection. The protective factors, parental resilience, concrete supports. I mean, even though things were not at their best, that mother rose to the occasion, right? And she did the things that she needed to do to protect her kids, or to care for them, right? And so if you didn't dig or do that comprehensive assessment on just looking face value, you could have easily taken those kids. But that's not what we're about. That's not what DR is about. And again, we're kind of shifting our practice so that all of our programs kind of look the same. All of our interventions are family-centered, and all of us are doing those rigorous and balanced assessments to get the big picture, because only then are we able to truly provide the right size intervention for that family. That was a wonderful story.
Well, we do have some questions coming in. So
Okay.
The first question is, what is the difference between VR and DCFS family-centered services cases, or PS cases?
Great question. Well, I'll start with the protective service case. So you can have a protective service case that stems from an investigation. So if that protective services case is open, that means that that family or that parent had a true finding of a child maltreatment. And so once that investigator went out and assessed, they said, yes, child maltreatment has happened. This family is in need of services to mitigate whatever those worries are that surround that child maltreatment, and to lower risk. They open a protective services case. And in a protective services case, those kids remain in the home and are connected to services. That family is connected to services. And differential response there are no determinations. We're not finding true or unsubstantiated. Even though child maltreatment may exist and there are some risk, we're continuing to work with the family and provide them services or connect them to supports in order to mitigate that maltreatment and lower the risk that were assessed. And another thing to note too, when you go through an investigation and it's found true that maltreatment did exist, that perpetrator or offender, their name ends up on a registry, on the child maltreatment registry. And DR, because there's no formal determinations, their names don't end up on the registry, even though there may be an existence of child maltreatment.
Thank you for that description.
You're welcome.
I'm going to read this one. It says, Sharice, here is what I hear all of the time from my principals as a safety supervisor. We turned this in, and it could be pretty bad stuff, and we've turned in, again, worse stuff, and the children are still in the home. Is that, I mean, are y'all getting a lot of that lately? It seems a lot has happened to the children, but yet they are still in the home. Thanks for answering. So I think it goes back to, you know, what we've been talking about. There are times when it children should be taken away, but there's times when they're determined not to be. Can you speak to that comment or question?
I'll do my best because every situation is going to be different, and it's really hard to speak to something specifically like that when you don't know the details or the circumstances surrounding what was called in and what was assessed and how it was assessed. I can say generally, if it was an investigation, an investigator will go out, they will conduct interviews, talk to reporters, they'll talk to collateral, they will gather medical records if need be, and they will assess if there's a safety threat. If there's an immediate safety threat, meaning that if they don't do anything in that very moment, that child could be harmed, they will remove that child. And that's really the only time we're removing children from home, if there's an immediate, imminent safety threat. Like if we don't do anything, that child's going to be harmed. There's also situations where if we don't remove and there's still concerns with safety, we can put in a protection plan that kind of mitigates that safety threat. And those safety plans are monitored. Now, beside that, if we've assessed there's no safety threat, no protection plan, and we do our investigation and it's found true, then we're opening up a protective services case. And there are times, and I can say with with environmental neglect, those tend to be chronic maltreatment concerns and things that we do see quite often with families, and they kind of just come back through, they'll clean up, and those are really hard to provide services to. And I really don't, sometimes it could be mental health involved in those type of situations. Sometimes it's just families choosing to live that way. And if there's no immediate threats to children, I've seen cases where they have teenage children and they're living in filth like that. We're really looking at the vulnerability of kids and whether their condition is really a safety issue. But I really can't talk specifically on that question because it just depends on the situation and the circumstances.
And let me see if I understand this part right. When they mentioned it was pretty bad stuff and then worse stuff, those types of things would probably from the moment of report would probably branch off their investigation, not necessarily through your process, correct? If it was
right.
Bad stuff.
And then what is bad stuff, right? What do you classify as bad stuff? And so, and that's another thing that we're kind of working from, like moving from those generalizations and being really descriptive in behavior, because bad stuff can mean something totally different between you and me, right? And I've been in this field for a long time, and bad stuff, may look
really bad. Really bad.
Right. And so, and maybe I should have started there. Like, what do you consider bad stuff? But if it's like sexual abuse, really severe medical, physical abuse where there's broken bones, bruising, all of that goes to investigations. DR is really focusing on low to moderate maltreatment types and low to moderate risk.
So things like sexual abuse, actual physical abuse, those types of things would probably move more towards investigation if they were current and recent events.
Right, investigations, and then some of those sexual abuse or really bad physical abuse ones, depending on the ages, will go to this state police for them to investigate.
So that brings up another point. When I started kind of this series of child abuse trainings, I know this is the year that all educators are getting their 2 hours of child maltreatment training. I wanted, and those usually focus on when to report, how to report, what to report, the process of reporting. I really wanted to dig into the backside of that so that educators understand this is the start of a process. And so we have done one on educational neglect. We've done one with just the state police hotline, kind of a general. We've done this one now with differential response. I'm looking to find pieces from the investigative side that could do trainings as well. So watch for those. It might be, this is such a big process. One training is never going to cover it all. It might be that we have to kind of look at all the different pieces as they play into that. So another question, and I'll kind of answer this one. They're saying that having social workers in the schools would really help immensely, and they wish we could get funding for that. Yes, I think there's a need for our educators to be aware of that, more of the social work side, but also a trained social worker would be a huge benefit. What I would encourage you to do is look at your schools and find your foster care liaison. There is someone, I believe, in every single school district that works with children who are in the foster care system and branching them, kind of coordinating that educational piece through that. So I don't know that they're all trained social workers, but they certainly have that view of the other side of why those children are in care and how the pieces work together. So if there's concerns, if you are wondering, should you report or would you like someone to kind of talk to about some things that you're seeing, look for the foster care liaison and just see if they would be willing to have a conversation with you. I think they'd be a good resource. And so here's, thank you, Sharice. I've been told that the Community Services Office in Hot Springs has their own family service workers, and they're hesitant to call the hotline because they want to provide their own services. I'm doing a training with their staff on mandated reporting in August. My question is, what would you suggest for them? They're mandated reporters, but they're not wanting to call the hotline because it may not be that bad.
Okay. So there's a community, what kind of agency?
The Community Services Office in Hot Springs, and they have their own family service workers. And so, is this in the school district? The person who asked the question, are we talking about a family community or a community services office in the school district? No, it's just in the community. So they're, instead of calling the state
Okay.
hotline, they're kind of wanting to refer to their own community services hotline or reporting. I think.
Okay. And I know, and I'm saying this, and I know that we have criteria for mandating reporting. And I also know and believe and hope that as a community, as we're in our roles, that we're doing everything that we can to help families before we call in the big guns, right? As I like to say, because oftentimes, and this has happened, that our child welfare has become an all catch-all, right? In which it was really designed to really just meet the immediate safety needs of families. But now it's grown so much bigger than that, and everything is being thrown at us when some of those things can be resolved in the community, or just by someone saying, hey, what do you need? Can I help you with this? And so when I think of DR, I think of us getting back to community, back to that, we're all in this together. It takes a village to raise a kid or a family. And so for them, I applaud them for trying to meet the needs of those families before they call in a report into the hotline. I don't know what else to say about that. I think it's great that they're trying to help families at that level. And I think if we all pull together to do that, I think families would be better for it, communities would be better for it, and I think the burden wouldn't weigh so heavily on child welfare. It's all of us together, right? Working together, partnering together to help families.
I would say, just speaking from, this is purely the legalistic side of the mandated reporter laws. As educators, I'm not sure if that's the group you're talking about, is kind of not wanting to report to the hotline, but as mandated reporters, no one can talk us out of or turn us away from making a hotline call if we feel it is necessary. So if you're speaking to mandated reporters and they are feeling like they're being inhibited from using the hotline, they should take that step and know that that's not possible. They need to make the call if that's what they feel is necessary. It doesn't stop you. Once you make that call, it doesn't stop you from still using local resources and maybe turning to this community services center, and trying to provide supports for that family if possible. But it's a scary situation when we feel like there's any kind of agency or person, even an administrator at a school district, there's anyone trying to put a block in between a mandated reporter and the hotline call. That shouldn't be happening. You should go ahead and make the call if you feel it's at that level. And then just to say, they're asking about the habitation laws. Do you think part of the issue is that Arkansas has no habitation laws, so landlords are not required to fix issues, leaving it to tenants to barely scrap by? So I guess talking about how can you help fix if they can't get into more sustainable housing because of finances. What, to speak to that, what services, or are you aware of services that can be provided for those families who need to get out of a bad landlord situation into better housing?
That is a huge barrier for families, and housing is a huge barrier for child welfare just all over. And I don't know much about the habitation laws. I do know that, well, it feels like the laws in place are more helpful or beneficial to landlords than they are to tenants. And DR, we've come across a lot of situations where there's been deplorable housing where we can't get the landlord to do anything about it. And so these are the situations where we're thinking outside of the box, trying to find other resources or housing for families. Sometimes it's a hotel stay for 2 weeks until we can secure a deposit for a new place to live. Sometimes it's calling the assistant to the mayor, which one of our staff did in a DR, just trying to get some attention to this issue. So it's just working with families as they come and thinking outside of the box and really doing what we can to assist them in any way.
That is one of the harder issues. There's a lot more resources in a community, clothes closets, food closets, even parental classes, those types of things to help. Housing is such a hard issue for families.
It is. I had one worker called the Boy Scouts. They had a family that had some holes in their floors, and they came out, the Boy Scouts came out with some wood and they fixed the floors. And I mean, just little things like that. I mean, you just never know until you ask, right? what you can get or find for families. So just thinking outside of the box sometimes.
And then I think we've got several people on here from the children's advocacy centers around the state. And so they're offering those as a resource. If someone has the state website for the children's advocacy centers, if you want to pop it into the chat for everyone, these are groups or regions around the state that work with children and families. They usually host or house the CASA programs, which the court is CASA, the court-appointed special advocates, and those are volunteers that work directly with the children. So we are the children's voice in this process. We're the ones that can go in and speak for the child, especially if they're unable to express their own wishes, but to help the child if they've been removed from the home or are going through a process. We go in solely for the child. The parents may have themselves and an attorney. The DHS may have themselves an attorney. There's everyone with their attorney. The children get an ad litem, which is their attorney. But then a CASA serves as that kind of adult role just to help that child through the process. So yes, thank you, Taylor. The CAC link is in there now. You can find on there, they've got I think a finder where you can find your local service area. And they also have trained prevention community specialists that do mandated reporting and child maltreatment and managing disclosures. So they are a great resource for all these things that we're talking about for schools, if you want to look for them. Someone asked a question about the professional development that I mentioned for teachers. Teachers are required every 4 years to get 2 hours worth of professional development on child maltreatment. And it focuses mostly on, I mean, there's certain things it has to hit, but it focuses mostly on what to look for, how to report it, when to report it, trying to ease those concerns of, do I report this or do I not? Or, just making us more educated reporters. And so that's 2 hours every 4 years. And the professional development for that credit, for a training to have that credit, professional development credit, the curriculum has to be approved through the Commission on Domestic Abuse, Rape, and Violence. I'm getting those words wrong. Do you know the commission I'm talking about, Sharice? The Commission on Child Abuse, Rape, and Domestic Violence. Have I got those words right?
I'm not sure, but it sounds good.
There is a commission that
I
oversees
know.
all of that, and I always get those words backwards. I just call it the commission. So it's a very structured training to make sure that we're educating our reporters to do their diligence. Yeah, someone told me I got it right. Thank you.
Okay.
One of those versions that I stumbled out was right.
Yeah, we got a lot of acronyms and things, and yeah, I totally get it.
And I know the intent of it, but like I said, I never can get all the words in the right order.
Mhm.
Are there any other questions that y'all have? I think we've kind of gotten into a discussion phase. If anyone wants to be part of the discussion or have a question you want to ask, I can unmute you. And I really do appreciate this part of it, Sharice, because I think so much of it is, as educators, we have our own experiences, and that's really all we can speak from. So it's our own personal stories, just like the person who asked the question about, always reporting. I think that is a common thread that a lot of teachers feel. They report. Are they doing something wrong with their reporting that it's not getting worked on? But they don't always see that backside.
And you can call it if you're the reporter, and it is okay for you to call the investigator or the DR worker, especially if you have additional worries. So if you don't know if the family's been contacted or no one's contacted you, please feel free to call that county office, and someone can get you in contact with a worker.
So you wouldn't go back through the hotline to find out. You'd actually contact the county office?
You can contact the county office because if you're the reporter and you left your information, we have to call you. And if we haven't called you, call us, but someone should be calling.
So you mentioned that within 24 hours, you have to make contact with the parent and one parent and the child. Do I have that number right?
Within 72 hours, differential response. Investigations, their times is the time that they respond is contingent on the type of maltreatment. So sometimes it's within 24 hours, other times it will be 72 hours. And it's immediate, especially if they get a call from law enforcement, they may have to go out right away.
Yeah, those are different levels of calls if there's an imminent danger. How many people work in your office, and about how many calls do y'all handle or assignments do you handle in, say, a week?
Ooh, I don't know the numbers. Like I said, we have around 37 DR workers throughout the state. Some of them wear multiple hats. So not only are they doing DR, they're doing like protective services cases. We have about 10 to 12 DR supervisors throughout the state. And then the DR unit in Little Rock and Central Office is comprised of myself and a specialist. And so the referrals we receive fluctuate throughout the year. So this is kind of our downtime where we don't see a lot of referrals. And so workers may be carrying maybe 10 or 15 cases or referrals, at least up until August. We get hit really hard at the end of the school year with educational neglect referrals, which is very overwhelming for our staff. Some school officials call at the end of the year, like all of the neglect referrals or neglect concerns, educational neglect concerns that they've had throughout the year. And so trying to respond to those within 72 hours, and you're getting, I think here in Pulaski County for 1 week, goodness, we got like 70 calls. And so we only have 4 workers in Pulaski County. So that was really challenging for us to get out there and respond. And so myself and my specialist, we were assisting Pulaski County in responding to those referrals. So it fluctuates throughout the year.
I think that's one of the things when we did the educational neglect training, the conversation was around, is there something in the structure of the school year that kind of brings everyone to wait until the last 4 or 5 weeks of school? And we've not really found that trigger in the educational process that's causing it. And so we're encouraging schools to monitor that process year round and make sure they're not holding something or waiting till a certain point that really does overburden the system, and maybe it's something that could have been identified or addressed a little bit earlier. So
Yes, and that would be very helpful. And we actually, I don't know if you're familiar with the Engage Arkansas program. Well, we worked this school year with them in Graduation Alliance and helping meet the needs of families as it related to educational neglect. And so they were in that program, Graduation Alliance, once it was identified that families were in need or students were in need because they weren't engaged in school, right? And kind of a result of the pandemic, people weren't getting on virtually. They were reaching out to families, trying to re-engage them. And if that didn't work, they were reporting to truancy. And so we were kind of really that last resort once they've went through all of those channels and nothing was working, and then they would call a report into the hotline. And so I don't know if that process was going to continue. I think it was kind of just like a pilot to kind of see how it would work. But again, it was the schools and this agency really trying to help families as it related to educational neglect, trying to do what they could do first before they brought child welfare into the picture.
if any of y'all are interested on that, on educational neglect, if that's part of your duties, I would encourage you to go back and find that training on my webpage. It really it simplified the process, because what we hear is that schools not really sure what they should provide. They were sending like 40 and 50-page faxes on 1 or 2 students to the hotline. And really the hotline only needs 5 things answered. And it's just an answer to those questions, not the documentation behind all of it. That needs to go to the worker when it's investigated. So that was really, that was a clog for the hotline. And so if you're charged with reporting educational neglect and you're not sure, or you'd like more information on that process, I'd encourage you to go back and watch it, because I think it makes your job easier too, so that you're not overwhelming yourself with a lot of work that's really not beneficial.
That's the point.
So someone has asked, what information other than the reporting should someone have available when they make the initial hotline call?
A great question. If there are any strengths about the family that you know, do they have any other supports? What services are they receiving? And I think the hotline staff will ask that question. Do you know of any other services or supports the family has? And also if there's an additional person that may know more about the family, especially if the teacher isn't reporting, it's the school attendance clerk. If it's the school attendance clerk, leave the teacher's name and phone number, and or the school counselor, someone who we can contact that will have additional information about the family that may be helpful to us. That was a great question.
So are there any other questions y'all would like to put in the chat? Feel free to drop them in. And several people have wanted to express their appreciation to you, Cherise, not only for the training today, but for everything that you do for children. And I want to echo that. I know there are a lot of children who go to sleep safer at night because of what you do. And so thank you for that and the work that your staff in your office, but then around the state as well do. It's a hard job to live in that world with those kids who are struggling, but thank you for walking in those paths.
Thank you. You're so welcome. And thank you all for all that you do. You do a lot for children and families. And your role is just as challenging because some of the children that you meet every day are having this trauma, right? And having these struggles at home. And so you guys have to also navigate that and do what you can to help support that child or children. So thank you for what you do as well.
Absolutely. We're proud of our educators in the state and the work that they've done, not just this last year, but continue to do. I don't see any other call or any other comments coming in. So we'll go ahead and kind of conclude. Thank you all for attending today. I will get the certificates out. It usually takes me about a week to get them turned around, so give me some time. But you will receive an email either saying they've been uploaded into ESC Works or with your certificate attached, one of the two. You will hear from me when I've got everything done. And we will get this recording posted on the DESE School Safety website. I'm going to pop back in all those links that I did before, just one more time for everyone. I can get over to Jim. If you were not registered and you need a certificate, let me know. If you are in a group in your room and you want to let me know who all is in the room, chat box, let me know as well. And then also the feedback survey. We really would like your feedback on this session and what we can do to provide more information that you need. So I think with that, we'll go ahead and close off for today, give you back about 45 minutes of your day. You can go grab a Diet Dr. Pepper or your drink of choice and kick your feet up and have 45 extra minutes before you move on with the rest of your day. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Cherise. I'll be in touch.
Okay, thanks.